I'm going to share the trip on the Dubawnt River from this summer, 2023. This is my third trip on the Dubawnt River. Here's a map. Some of my friends ask me, where is the Dubawnt River? My friends who are not canoeists or canoeists who don't go up north. So here you go. The Dubawnt River starts in the south end of Northwest Territories and heads northeast towards Dubawnt Lake, which is in Nunavut, and then you continue paddling and heading northeast, and then the Dubawnt River flows into the Thelon, and the Thelon heads east towards Baker Lake and Chesterfield Inlet, which is an inlet of Hudson Bay. And the first 2 weeks of our trip is in northern Saskatchewan. We started on Black Lake, which is adjacent to Stony Rapids, and through a series of rapids and lakes, portages and lakes, you get over the height of land into the beginning of the Dubawnt River. Here is a different map. Black Lake, the beginning, Dubawnt Lake, and then the end, Baker Lake. My journey on the Dubawnt River started by many Zoom calls throughout the winter and more immediately before the trip, spending a month in Winnipeg with my friend Jacques, with whom I taught in Cambridge Bay. He lives on a farm south of Winnipeg with his family and had a few lambs, and I got the opportunity to use all these amazing tools and improve my carpentry skills. We built a chicken coop together and had lots of fun with his family. And Jacques was a very important part of our trip because he offered me for the third time a ride to Stony Rapids. It's a long drive. We had fun, and it was important because we could take a lot of our gear, and it wasn't a small undertaking for him because he had to drive for 20 hours back by himself, back home to Winnipeg. So thank you so much, Jacques. Getting our gear in place was occupying a lot of our preparation time. This is Lee and Eric with their gear in Portland, Oregon. Yeah, the logistics of getting all the gear up north were discussed often. One of the issues was, well, of course, we were from different places in North America, and then we were dealing with Rise Air that flies into Stony Rapids, Saskatchewan, that has lost people's gear, and so we did not want to experience that. That's why we opted to drive most of our gear, because if you don't get your gear, you don't get to paddle. Here's the crew. First 2 weeks, I paddled with Zach from Regina, who was recommended to me by Martin from La Ronge. Martin has an outfitting company, and the two men paddled together on a lot more ambitious trip than this one. Zach was accustomed to paddling 60 kilometers a day. Together we did mere 30. And this is the American crew that arrived after Zach left. From the left, Eric from Portland, Oregon. In the middle, Mason, who lives in Bozeman, Montana. And on the right, Ron from Portland, Oregon. This is John, whose idea was to paddle the Dubawnt River in the first place. He loved the story of Arthur Moffat, Arthur Moffat's group, a group of young men from the States who paddled the river in 1955 without the help of the internet, and ended up in a loss of one life, the leader of the group. And so this was a passion of John's, and we shared in that while we were on the trip. This is Lee, with whom I paddled on a few of my northern trips. His northern paddling portfolio is pretty amazing, as well as his cooking skills. And yeah, it was wonderful to share this trip with him. And this is myself in my Ava of the North outfit. I tried on a few different names as my crew called me different names, and Ava stuck the best. This is the beginning of our trip, the first 2 weeks with Zach, Black Lake, and then a series of portages leading north. It's a first starting with 7 portages. First one is 5 kilometers, the second one is 1 kilometer, and then they get shorter. That gets you up to Chipman Lake, and then there are a few more portages before you get over the height of land. The portages are relatively easy. As they're used by snowmobiles. They're clear, mostly dry. There's a little bit of muskeg. Well, not a little bit, some muskeg in some places. This is Zach and myself. First day on Black Lake. We had a bit of cool, rainy weather, but that cleared very fast, and the rest was very hot and sunny. Zach's passion is wrestling, so he was a wonderful companion for a portage route. These are some of the little lakes in the Chipman portage series. This is a memory of 2017 trip, Les Wilcox, and an example of the well-established snowmobile trail. Along the Chipman River, the river follows this hilly range. From Chipman Lake, you get into Bompas Lake, and then another portage gets you into the bottom of Selwyn Lake, which is a really long lake. We took advantage of lovely beach campsites. This is a memory of from 2004 trip. Hugh Westhauser did this 2-week stretch from Black Lake to Oldaya Lake by himself. where he met the rest of our group. He encountered ice and pretty high winds, so it was a much more challenging trip for him than for Zach and myself. We also had 2 weeks, and basically we just paddled in the morning between 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. and then we enjoyed ourselves the rest of the day, reading or fishing, swimming, resting, whatever. Yeah, it was pretty leisurely pace. Beautiful campsite on South Selwyn Lake. Our early paddling start. Some good fishing. And setting up a tarp on Selwyn Lake so that we could get enough shade to keep cool. Northern Selwyn Lake. From Selwyn Lake, you cross into Flat Lake, and there is a short portage to Waldaya Lake. Over here, also, you can paddle around and an extra 15 kilometers and not do the portage. This time, I chose to do the portage. And I understood why people don't do it. It's wet at the beginning and it is wet at the end. It is not fun, but it is just 700 meters and certainly doable. This is an esker on the south end of Waldaya Lake. Lots of good memories for me. Barbara Burton in 2004 Canada Day was our first day of our trip. Barbara with George Stroud and Ron Brook in the picture. I learned a great deal from Barbara and George in the beginning of my paddling on the barren lands. It was truly wonderful to get to know them and learn from their trip experience. They taught me what I know now and got me going on my northern expedition. So thank you both. This is Zach, same place. We were going to stay here for one day, but because Mason's luggage didn't arrive with WestJet, we spent another couple of days, so it got a bit more stressful for Zach, who had to get back to his job and his family. Waldaya Lake has a potential for a lot of wind exposure and waves. It got a bit wavy, but our crew exchange happened without a problem. Zach went home and our 5 American crew came in. We set up our boats and on we went. This is Waldaya Lake in 2004. Fair bit of ice. And 2017, a fair bit of wind. Fiona. Spending 2 days waiting out for the wind to drop. Reading, sleeping, and hiking. From Waldaya Lake, you get into this section where the river flows, a little bit, but mostly it's just small lakes, very picturesque. We managed to break one seat, so we had to repair it, which happened at a fishing camp, abandoned fishing camp, where there were lots of items that we could use or choose from to fix the seat. An esker on the north end of Waldaya Lake, very pretty place. And resting after dinner. The small lake section with a bit of a flowing water continues. On the eskers, here you can find remnants of cabins. We were camped near one, and then we continued onto this other esker on Hindi Lake. And in this place in 2017, we had a crew changeover. Our crew had a sense of humor and 4 women in it. Not 3 women. Oh, 4 women, yes. Which was pretty cool. And this is our 2023 crew scouting a rapid and having fun. And we're heading into Boyd Lake. You can see here 2 eskers. Eskers are always fun. We're camping high above the river, where one of the eskers is crossing the river. Really pretty place. And this is the second esker at the entry to Boyd Lake. Beautiful place to hike around. And in 2004 with Charles, we were examining the paraphernalia in the cabin and having fun. From Boyd Lake, there's a short section of a river to Barlow Lake. Pictures from that section. Even though the whole trip, or yes, the whole trip is called the Dubawnt River. Really, there are only sections in between the lakes that are flowing river. So I would say 65% of this route, what's called Dubawnt River, are lakes. It's kind of an important thing to realize when you're signing up for this trip. You're going to be paddling a lot of lakes. Carey Lake is an important landmark with a cairn on this peninsula, with notes of many trips, including Pierre Trudeau. This time it was very hazy and very buggy and disappointing because we did not find any notes. Brian Johnson has previously taken the notes out and copied them and published a book, and then a group took them back to this place, but we could not find the case, so it's a mystery to us what happened. This is the cairn in 2004, and our group at the same place in 2017. Northern Carey Lake. You get into some rapids. We did a bit of scouting through this thick bush. And this is Mason and John at the bottom of the rapid, successfully run by all of us. We had a very competent crew as far as whitewater goes. The next section was Markham and Nicholson, another 40 kilometers of lakes. And then there is a river section that took us to Dubawnt Lake. And I always did my best to fish during lunch. And John was wonderful at filleting my fish, which I don't know how to do yet. Dubawnt Lake is gigantic. There's a great exposure east, 40 kilometers east. Yes, you have to paddle for about 100 kilometers on it. And I suppose looking at this ice, which is, it's a picture from 2004. It's a good time to know what the word Dubawnt means, and it is a word from Chippewa language, suggesting that this is water between the shore and the ice. So in the lakes in the late spring. So this would have been a word that had significance, especially on the Dubawnt Lake, which did not used to thaw, or just thawed around the edges throughout the summer. So we had about a 3 or 4 day delay in 2004 here. This year, however, there was no ice, and we started with this really lovely campsite on rocks, and a warm day, and a fish fry. And then we had one really windy day, and then we could continue paddling on this expanse of water. This is the outlet bay of Dubawnt Lake, and this place was significant for us because of the historical aspect of our trip. Here we found a cairn in a tobacco tin, which contained a note from the 1955 expedition, which John and all of us were really excited about, that were written by Skip Pessel and contain the names of all the expedition members. Yeah, it was a very special moment for our group. The river really gets going at the outflow from Dubawnt Lake. And this is a break after all the excitement on the cairn, having a pee and continuing paddling. Scouting some not too difficult rapids, and then coming to this 4-kilometer canyon, a beautiful place. And a portage. This is the outflow out of the canyon. which brings you to Carey Lake, which has a lovely esker again, a place for hiking, and then some more fishing for grayling and trout. Next is Wharton Lake, and before we get to Wharton Lake, we deal with one of several alluvial fans, and Ron gets to do some fishing, and he gets the biggest fish of our trip, a massive lake trout. And then we get to this area where it's just south of Marjorie Lake, where Dubawnt River has two channels, west and east. We take the west channel, and the Art Moffat expedition took the eastern channel, and we ended up paddling into the bottom of the channel to see the rapid where Arthur Moffat died. And then you can see this is the last bit of the Dubawnt River as it heads towards the Thelon. Pretty nice area with some hills in the distance, and then picking up some speed as it heads towards Dubawnt Gates, which is this narrowing in the river with really gigantic waves. We chose to portage, camp on top of the hill. It's a short portage. These are the waves from the top of the hill, and the view from the eastern side of the river in 2004. George Stroud and Barbara Burton ran this. The rest of us portaged. The waves were, and even this year, were truly large, but very possible to run it with spray covers. These were the bugs at Dubawnt Gates, and a view of the portage on the western shore. And then you get into the lovely Thelon River Lakes, Beverly and Aberdeen and Schultz. From the size of the beaches, you can see how low the water levels were. And it was also super hot, but thank goodness the water was cool, so we could cool ourselves off as we paddled on these expanses of water. Not every day the water was this flat, but we had pretty decent weather. We continued fishing and visiting these Inuit artifacts, Inukshuks, and other artifacts we found. There are numerous on these lakes. And after some more hiking on Schultz Lake, we got a tiny bit of rain and fun with the rainbow. Some more rings from 2004 that we explored with Barbara Burton, me and Lee with the rainbow. And this is my last picture, which is at the end of the lakes, where Ron got some nice fish again. And this shows the last stretch of the river leading to Baker Lake, which can be run pretty fast, almost in one day, as it's continuous. Class 1-2 rapid starts with Alexaktok Rapids, which is class 3, which in the low water levels this year was a relatively easy run. And I will stop sharing pictures at this point, and I will pass the microphone on to Lee to talk about the Art Moffat story and relation to our trip.
Skip wrote, and Skip wrote a book called Barren Grounds, and really a great book that recounted the trip that he made with Art Moffat from his journals as well as the journals of others. And we had the benefit of a journal that was made available to us through a WCA member, and it was Joe Lanowet's journal. So we actually were able to identify a number of the campsites that the Moffat party had camped on along the way. And we were able to identify some of the campsites where the Tyrrell brothers had camped in their journey. And, you know, it was really a fascinating trip. So one of the things that happened is about 2 weeks before I left on the trip, which was the beginning of July this year, Eva said, Lee, you need to, look at your email. And there's emails in there from this guy named Matthew Boyd, who's based in Oakland. And Matthew was a cinematographer, or is a cinematographer, who's creating a movie. And what happened is Matthew's stepson goes to school with Skip's grandson in Oakland. And Skip's son was picking up his son at the school, and then talking to Matt, says, well, what do you do? And, Matt said, well, I'm a cinematographer. And he says, well, my father was involved in making a documentary once back in 1955, but they never finished it. And so long story short, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but when Art Moffat was going down the river, part of what he wanted to do was document the river and, following kind of in the footsteps of the Chippewayan Indians and down to the area where the Inuit lived, and kind of retracing Tyrrell's expedition and kind of living off the land and making a documentary about it. And when they had their tragic accident on September 14th of 1955, Skip and the crew that survived cached Art's body and the canoe and the box of film on a small island that Eva was pointing out right there between Wharton and Marjorie Lakes. And on our trip, as Eva said, we paddled to the base of that rapid. We looked at and filmed the rapid in a great amount of detail and looked at it and all. And so we have that to tell. But what was really interesting is I had my satellite inReach communicator, and I did reach out to Matthew Boyd. And I said, we're leaving in 2 weeks. We're going to the river. And he said, well, I'd really like to know about, more about Baker Lake and the end of the trip. And I said, well, why don't you come up there and meet us? And so he hemmed and hawed a little bit. And then he talked to his wife, who said, well, you should just go. And so thanks to the donations that he had received right around that time, he made enough money to go up to Baker Lake and shoot some video. And he arrived in Baker Lake the same day we did. And along the way, he kept in touch with me on my satellite inReach communicator. And he said, I'm bringing Skip with me. And so we were delighted to meet Skip, who came. And Skip was really the number 2 in command on the Moffat trip in 1955. And he also brought Cree Moffat, who was Art's daughter, who was just 3 when Art passed away. But she had not had a chance to really visit Baker Lake before, and was able to visit her father's grave. And I know many of you on the line who've been to Baker Lake in the past have walked up the hill to the Baker Lake Cemetery and seen Art's grave. It's a site that, almost every paddler that goes to Baker Lake probably goes up there and looks at. And so all together, we saw that. We saw the note that Eva had a few pictures of it, that Skip had written that note there. And it was just really a wonderful experience. But what I think I'll be able to share in a future presentation is a little bit more of what kind of happened after that, after Eva left. And we had really lucked out with some great support from Boris Kotelowitz and Helen from uh, Inuit, from Ukpik Aviation in Baker Lake. They arranged for us to charter out a flight for the day to fly from Baker Lake and fly over the rapid where the accident had occurred in 1955 with Skip, or Fred, sitting in the co-pilot's seat. And we circled the rapid at about 300 feet and got some really great video of that. And then we flew north over Marjorie Lake and over the Marjorie Hills to Aberdeen Lake. And we crossed the site where Skip has said that when he got to the top of the hill, that there's a lot that kind of goes into this, but he got to the top of the hill where he saw Aberdeen Lake, and he said that was the time when I thought we might actually survive, and just really touching. And but what was really amazing is all these coincidences that have come together, and with Matthew and the help from Skip and the others who survived that trip, and a lot of support from paddlers everywhere, Matthew is working to complete the movie that Art Moffat set out to start or to make. And the movie is called Barren Grounds. He has put together a trailer and a website called Barren Grounds. It's at barrengrounds.com. And in order to make the movie happen, he's got to shoot some more footage, and he's got to get some movie footage digitized. But after Art died, the RCMP officer, Claire Dent, went out and brought the body back for burial in Baker Lake, but he also salvaged the film and managed to get the film shipped to Rochester, New York, where the Kodak company was able to restore the film and get it developed, and it's in beautiful shape. There's a little bit of a saga there that I won't go into now, but the film disappeared for about 40 years and then was recovered again. And now, with the full support of the Moffat family and Skip and the other survivors of the trip, Matthew has been putting together this movie. And so what I'd like to do is ask everybody who hasn't already had a chance to contribute to go take a look at that website, barrengrounds.com, and consider making a donation to fund putting together the movie. It's going to be an amazing documentary put together by an award-winning cinematographer, director, Matthew Boyd. And I'm sure that everybody here is going to want to see that movie eventually. The footage is phenomenal. And it's if you could see the moving pictures of the things that Eva showed us still shots of, and to see those rapids and to imagine what it was like in 1955. And quite frankly, it doesn't look all that different. We recognized a lot of their campsites. We recognize the landscapes. It's a truly magical place, and we want as many people as possible to see the movie and get a chance to kind of get a sense for how immense and how magical this place is, and kind of live it through the eyes of some of the people who were the first really kind of recreational paddlers to enter that vast area and kind of discover it on their own. And so I talked to Matthew about a week ago. He's put together a first scene that includes some footage of the airplane circling over the accident where the canoe accident occurred, and some footage of Skip walking up to the cemetery where Art's grave is. He's been digitizing and producing other parts of the movie. And I've been learning a little bit about movie making. It is not a cheap thing to do. And Matt, he's got to get a producer. He's got somebody that's going to be doing the editing. He's starting on that. There's a lot of work to be done with sound and color correction and all that to make this a full-length documentary film that I think everybody would be really excited to see. So we'll pause there because I know Eva wants to leave a few minutes for questions. But and I'll throw in one more thing, is that anybody who contributes tonight, we'll be able to keep track through the website, but I'll double the donations. I'll match everything that everybody does tonight. I'll match that with a matching contribution.
Thanks so much, Lee. That was awesome. I couldn't have done even 10% of what you just said.
Well, you did the other 95%. So thanks for getting us all together, Eva.
All right. Okay, we'll take questions.
Eva, I don't have a question, but I'd like to say I really enjoyed your program. It brought back memories. I did the Dubawnt in 1975, and I was to the Thelon River in 1969. And when I saw Art's cross up in the graveyard, I did some research and I realized that he was the first non-indigenous people to be buried there. And in 1969, they had all of 150 or 60 Inuit people in Baker Lake, which today has grown absolutely exponentially. And it was fun to see your slides, and it hasn't changed much since 1975.
Thanks, Bob.
Ava, Skip Pessel here, and I'd like to thank you and Lee for a wonderful presentation. Remarkable journey for me back in time. And I had a few comments about contrast and things I saw in your footage compared to my recollection. And one of the first things was the remarkable highways that the Chipman portages seemed to me to be compared to the time when we were bushwhacking through that same terrain. We were in little footpaths with the bush tight around us. And I guess perhaps because of winter snowmobile travel or what have you, it's been opened up. And it was quite a different aspect than what we remembered. Other than that, I was impressed with the possibility of intervention in your travels, either by aircraft or by communication, changing party members along the route, things that were so totally impossible for us. And the communication with the outside, which was available to you, and I'm sure helping to feel a little more secure and support. We saw aircraft overhead at about 30,000 feet occasionally, and that was about the only contact we had with any outside influence. And it, I think, created quite a different atmosphere. Another thing was the remarkable change in equipment. The expedition equipment that you have now with the canoes, the covers, the tents, the clothing, all seemed so appropriate now and so supportive. We were in jeans and light parkas, no head nets, and it was, I guess, a different experience, but I'm envious of the beauty and the practicality of the modern equipment. On Waldaya Lake, I was surprised and wondered if you had encountered what I may have missed in your film, and that is any scars from the really large wildfires that we encountered on the, I think it must have been the west bank of the lake, about halfway up its shoreline. I don't know if you noticed any damage or regrowth that might have occurred after that wildfire swept through, but it didn't seem to me to be apparent.
I would say it was not apparent, no, not at the time, not this year.
I guess that's one of the fine things about nature's ability to restore and recover. And I'm happy to see that. Anyway, it was a remarkable return for me to a beautiful place. And in spite of the tragedy, it was a transformative experience for me. It changed my whole life in terms of professional career and a sense of appreciating nature and supporting the indigenous community. One comment about Baker Lake, as I recall, when I was there, the population, the Inuit population was, I think, 32. And I understand this summer when we were there, the population is somewhere around 2,000 with a gold mine not too far away, the principal employer of many of the Inuit people, and quite a change, and yet a remarkably hospitable and supportive and warm community that Matthew and I and Lee, certainly me for the first time, experienced and appreciated very, very much. Thanks again for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was wonderful to have your
Fred.
contribution to this.
Eva, this is Ray. All I'm seeing is a black screen. Are you actually seeing the people that are talking? Like Skip?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see that. I just see Zoom Toronto 2020.
Ray, did you follow the directions that we put in the chat?
Yes, Randy, I can see you, or I can see a picture of you. I don't see you actually talking.
No, I don't have my camera on. Huh.
Okay.
And you should mute yourself when you're not talking.
I have been muted.
You are not. You were not earlier. You kept popping up.
Who's that?
So the view up in the right-hand corner, the top, and then you click speaker instead of gallery.
Thanks,
That's what I've
Randy.
had all along.
That was very enjoyable, Eva. Thank you very much. I was curious about the pack canoes you might have mentioned before, and I didn't catch it. I've always heard pack canoes are quite slow on lake travel. Was that the best way to go though with your trip, just for the plains and whatnot, or would have you preferred to have a traditional hard hulled canoe? And the other question I was going to ask, will you do the Dubawnt again?
Pack boats are definitely slower, and but getting into northern places, they make it much easier for travel to get in, get out. There's no doubt about it. And no, I don't want to do the Dubawnt River again. 3 times is enough.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. I had like boring technical questions on the pack boats. I noticed you were using packs, like red packs instead of barrels. Is that work better?
I'll let Lee answer that question.
Well, for this kind of trip, that worked fine because the packs can basically be collapsed, and you don't need to carry them out with you the way you would with barrels that stay full, or maintain their size the whole time. As Eva said, this trip does not have a whole lot of whitewater. When I go with people that have entirely whitewater trips, the barrels can work. But the other thing is, so Eva was out for 10, 12 days before we flew in and joined her, but we still had to pack 45 days worth of food. And you can fit those kind of red Duluth pack into within the canoes, and they're over the top at the beginning, but as time goes on, you can actually get rid of the packs that you don't need. So, they keep the water out of things too. But if I was doing a truly whitewater trip, like some of these trips that are all whitewater, I'd probably want to have a barrel.
So it looked like you had lined them with something too, like a big liner inside?
Yeah, they have plastic liner bags inside, and that's you kind of gooseneck them tight. It's what a lot of people do in the Boundary Waters and Quetico Park and that kind of thing, or Algonquin, kind of a more traditional style. They didn't have plastic bags though, but that's what we use.
Okay. And also on one of the pack boats, I noticed, I'm asking about this because I've done one of those trips up north and we had barrels, and I'm like, man, those red Duluth bags look like they pack better, make more sense for all the reasons you said. Also on the pack boat, you had a yellow, was it a custom spray cover? It kind of.
Yeah. We all had spray covers. Two of the boats were mine, and the spray covers that we used were actually they're called the O'Hara style. Bob O'Hara's on the line, but they're 3-part canoe covers, and each part is separate. So there's a bow section and a stern section, which you can use separately. And the center section kind of folds up like a dog sled cover or a sled would cover would fold up. So the flaps fold over each other and clip with little quick releases. So you can, go down tight to the gunnels if you want, or you at the beginning when things are bulky and you haven't eaten all of your food yet, you can, kind of go up above the gunnels if you wish. Okay.
And that's something Bob had designed himself?
Well, he designed, and the covers we get were made by Dan Cook of Cook Custom Sewing, who has a website that lists all the custom sewings that he has. The other style is called the Cliff Jacobson style, and that style tends to have it's down tight to the gunnels, and and then Pack Boat, of course, makes its own cover,
right,
and that requires lacing up, and you have to kind of lace it up on both sides. And the disadvantage of that is the advantage is that it's really tight to the canoe. The disadvantage is it takes forever to lace it up. It's kind of like, sewing it up each day.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if I could ask about if you saw any muskox, moose. I'm guessing you probably don't care, but what wildlife you got to see? And thank you, wonderful presentation.
So we saw, I'll answer and then others can chime in, but we saw a few moose several times. We saw a few singletons and then a couple doubles. And we saw a few, like a couple single muskox and then a couple doubles and like one herd of about 30. But compared to when I did the trip in 2003 and the time that Eva and I went through that area in 2012, far less wildlife. And it may have been because it was so hot this summer. We didn't see any wolves. We heard wolves. Caribou was really slim pickings this summer. It was just very, very few caribou. Skip asked about the fires. We didn't see a lot of fires. We saw smoke a couple times. There was tundra fires were burning. And there were days when the sky was orange. And I'm sure that, had they had weather report readings, they would have said that for people that have compromised immune systems, they shouldn't be breathing that air.
Miriam, did this answer your question? Miriam was asking about the changes in wildlife throughout the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I was just curious because I think it was 2012, we saw thousands and thousands of caribou on the Dubawnt, but last year we barely saw any traces of caribou. We didn't go down the Dubawnt, we went up the Dubawnt where we met you.
Mm-hmm.
So
same here. Yeah.
You check.
Yuri is asking on the chat if all the canoes were folding or pack canoes. Yes, all our canoes were the same.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions or comments or anything you guys want to share with the paddling community online?
Ava, I have a question, a little bit follow-up on the comments about the lack of caribou. Is there any understanding of what is controlling the variation in the annual migration? When we were there in 55, it was like a brown river of fur moving south, and it was so totally different than what I understand from more recent descriptions. And then while we were at Baker Lake, I had a chance to talk with the mayor of the community, and he described his grandmother talking about the starvation, which I think occurred in the late 50s. I think Farley Mowat also wrote about it, perhaps inaccurately, but it seems that over the years there's been a very great difference in the numbers of caribou, and I wonder if anybody has any ideas of what is controlling that variation.
Well, one thing that independent of population size, the animals do different migration routes up there.
Ah, okay. So perhaps there were plenty of caribou, but in different places?
Right, and also the timing is dependent upon. I don't remember exactly, but the timing of the migration as well as the migration routes changes from year to year, and that's why we have these communities that are that starved, even in hundreds of years ago. It's just, if you're not there when the caribou come through, then you're sort of out of luck.
Right,
I
understand.
think my understanding is that they have been in a constant decline. And as far as I understood, the Camineriac herd maybe still in the area, but the Beverly herd is not. It might have totally left the area. Yeah, and there's yearly meetings with the Camineriac Beverly Caribou Management Boards where indigenous peoples are trying talking about managing the caribou. There's lots of pressure from climate change, industry, and hunting with the skidoos being more accessible nowadays, and the caribou migrating, into vast areas where they have pressure from Dene communities in Saskatchewan, Inuit communities in Nunavut. So it's not looking good for the caribou, but I'm not the right person probably to speak about that. So, but yeah, there definitely are going to be less and less caribou on the landscapes if we don't change the way we do things and treat our wildlife.
I know in our community, and I've heard it in other northern communities, the old adage that nobody knows the way of the caribou or the wind, and that there's so many issues going into this right now. It's extremely difficult for a lot of northern communities, but getting an easy answer is available to us. That being said, there's definitely, there is no doubt there is a change. The caribou are not there, and the way that we can see their forearms, the ice that we're seeing on the snow was never traditionally the way. They're being damaged in the snowpack. Muskox are moving south like never before. Muskox in Fort Chipewyan, Lake Athabasca again this fall. Muskox all through the boreal forest here now. Moose moving far north. Things are changing. There's no doubt about that.
And I think the forest fires have contributed to that too. Like when the caribou come down to Selvin Lake, they're kind of just on the islands because that's where they haven't bird. They need that caribou moose, that old growth habitat. And I think forest fires are really making that difficult for the caribou. And I remember, I appreciate what you said about nobody knows the way of the caribou. I also remember saying that caribou are like ghosts. They come from nowhere, fill up the land, and disappear again. Yeah.
So we had a question about donations, and there's a link at the website that I think Lynette posted earlier for it's through a nonprofit. And so I think that the donations are all in US dollars. There must be a way somehow to contribute Canadian dollars, but if not, then it may just be in US. I haven't tried to do it in Canadian dollars. Well, it's fascinating to see that there's been lots of people here who have paddled the Dubawnt and have been paddled on other rivers near and around the Dubawnt. And it's always great to see the history of it and to see who knows who's going to go there next. So.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation for both of you.
Thank you guys for being here, all of you. I think it's time to wrap up. Yeah, it's been so special to see all of you, and especially to have Fred on the line, who has done this trip in 1955. That's so remarkable. You're an inspiration to us.
Thank you, Ava. And just to reinforce Lee's comments about Matthew Boyd and the forthcoming documentary, you can imagine how much I anticipate that, but also the possibility of combining and comparing the footage that we took in 55 with the current footage that Matthew has been taking this past summer and hopefully next summer. It should give one a very interesting insight into some of the changes, climate change perhaps, or otherwise, just how we evolve over time. And perhaps 70 years more or less is enough of an interval to make it meaningful. So I look forward to the documentary very much, and I appreciate any support that you may have given, and presumably will enjoy seeing it as well. So thank you very much, Lee and Ava and everyone else. Good to see you and hear from you. And I look forward to continuing to be in the Dubawnt family.
All right.
All right. Well, let's see each other on the waters next.
All right.
Amen.
Have a good night,
Okay,
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.